All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would everybody join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. School Superintendent Mr. Paul Woodard will lead us tonight in prayer.
Please bow your heads. Dear precious and heavenly Father, we thank you so much, Lord, for all the blessings you bestowed upon each and every one of us, Lord. Lord, we thank you for this great country that we live in, and we thank you for our families. We thank you for the people that make up the town of Newton Falls, our city council, our mayor, our city manager, and all the people that have distinguished offices here in the city of Newton Falls. Lord, I would ask that you would build a hedge of protection around our schools, our community, our country. Give us the strength, give us the courage and the wisdom and the knowledge to do the right things, to say the right things that would make you proud, Lord. And I ask, Lord, that you would let each and every one of us treat one another with kindness and respect, work together for the common good. We ask all these things in thy Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Just stay right there. Sit down, please. Just stay there. Okay. Tonight's our regular meeting of City Council. Today is April 1st, 2019. If you have your cell phones, please turn them off or set them to vibrate. Unless prearranged, the public comment sections are limited to 3 minutes. We use a timer. When the timer goes off, we ask you to conclude your statements. The public comment sections are not a comment or a question and answer session. The first public agenda comments are for agenda items only. The final public comment section is for any issue you want. And we ask you to keep the conversations down amongst yourselves so that everybody else could hear what's going on. Tonight we have a special presentation from Mr. Woodard for the, roll call. We could do that too. Take roll, please.
Beer? Mr. Beer?
Yes.
Mr. Alberini?
Here.
Mr. Battisti?
Here.
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Mr. Stumpert?
I don't understand it too loud. Mr. Woodard, Superintendent of Newton Falls City Schools, is going to give us a little update on the school district.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come here tonight and speak. I wanted to just come and talk a little bit about where the schools are at right now and the situation that we're facing. We did put an earned income tax on the ballot for May 7th. And an earned income tax is a tax on what it says there, on earned income, but it's not one that would affect people that are retired. It would also not affect Social Security income, pensions, 401ks, things of that nature. It's only on the people that are working, that live in this community, in the township, in the city, on their actual income. It's for 1.75. If this would pass, it would go into effect in January of 2020. And then at that time, we would allow our 6.2 emergency mill levy to expire, which would give senior citizens that are not working, that own their own homes, some tax relief. Because at that time, they would not have to pay the 6.2 mil emergency levy tax. After that, we would allow the second emergency 4.8 mil levy that we have on there to expire when it ran out, and we would discontinue that at that time. In the 8 years I've been here as a superintendent, I've had to cut programs. I've had to close our elementary building. I've cut 28 positions coming into this year. We're looking at more cuts. I've tried different things like shared service agreements with different communities next to us. For example, right now we're in a shared service agreement with Lordstown for our school psychologists. That's saving us about $25,000. We've done it with a technology coordinator, and I continue to pursue those avenues. Our employees have had to take 3 and 4 years worth of pay freezes. We at one time, a couple of years ago, actually had to borrow money to pay our payroll. Our enrollment has declined drastically over the last 8 years. We've lost over 450 students to enrollment just since 2010, and there's a lot of districts like us if you're paying attention to what's going on in the news, a lot of districts are having to close buildings, they're losing enrollment. A lot of factors go into this. Kids have more choices now with charter schools, parochial schools, homeschooling. People aren't having near as many kids as they used to. Young couples are leaving this area and going to the Columbus area, the bigger city areas, and even out west and down south for job opportunities. These are just some of the things that we're facing. But losing 450 students since I've been here has cost us $2.7 million for our general fund. Just this year, for example, with open enrollment, we've lost over $350,000. With the community and STEM schools that kids can attend, we've lost over $300,000. And there's other unfunded mandates that come down to us from time to time from the state, like College Credit Plus courses, which we must pay for when kids are taking College Credit Plus classes. And then there's things like busing students that go to some of the non-public and community schools where if a parent refuses to take a payment in lieu of, we have to transport that child if it's under 30 miles. I gave everyone a handout tonight. The first page basically describes what the earned income tax is and summarizes a little bit at the bottom there what I've already covered with the emergency levies that would be allowed to expire. If you open it up and go to the second page that's attached, looking at the top that says income tax 1.75% with an orange bar at the top, this gives you an example of if you had an annual gross earned income, it starts at $30,000 and goes down to $150,000, what your tax would be with a 1.75%. If you go to the middle of the page where it says property tax, and you see the light blue bar in the middle of the page where it says 6.2 emergency levy, and if you follow that across, go up to where the dark blue line is, you can see what the auditor's value of a home at $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, etc. would be. And when we would let that 6.2 emergency levy drop off, how much you would save if that was the value of your home. Just above that is the 4.8 emergency levy, and the values across from there would be what you would have in tax relief when that was allowed to drop off. If we were to ask for just an emergency mill levy like we have in the past, we would have to ask for over 19 mills in levies. And if you look where it says if there in the middle of the page, that shows you what you would have to pay for an annual cost. This would be a huge burden to our retirement people that live in Newton Falls if we went this route. And I know that the 1.75% earned income tax will raise taxes for people that are working. There's no doubt about that. And it could be burdensome. Our school is now at a point where our general fund is so low that if we continue down this path next year, we will be in deficit spending, and the state could come in and tell us you have to cut X amount of dollars. We've already cut things to almost a bare minimum. We've had a couple audits in the last 8 years since I've been here, and they've looked at what we've done and said, you're pretty much where you need to be when it comes to staffing. You're continually reducing it as enrollment drops. One of the things that we're facing, for example, our graduation class. When I came here, all the classes were over 100, and that was 8 years ago. Right now, we don't have any over 100. Our graduation classes are between 90 and 100, and our kindergarten first grade classes right now currently sit at 59 and 61. At this pace, in about 5 to 6 years, our average class size will probably be in the 60s. When I came here, like I said, it was over 100. We've lost a lot to enrollment. A lot of schools have in the state of Ohio. We're trying to do what we can to stay competitive. Brought in an assistant principal this year who has won awards when it comes to robotics and STEM. He started a club for robotics and has kids going, and he and a couple other teachers are volunteering their time to get into robotics. We would like to see robotics become a class in the near future. And I've been on the Missile Defense Committee with Mr. Alberini, Mr. Lynch, the mayor, and we've been talking about that for the last year or two. That would be great if that did come into our district. with the amount of jobs that it would produce and possibly people moving into here. But I can tell you this, they're not going to want to bring and send their kids to Newton Falls schools unless we can be competitive. And if we have to keep cutting, we are not going to be competitive with what's out there. I feel bad because for the 8 years that I've been here, all I've done is cut. When I came here, I didn't inherit much of a general fund. And it's never, we passed the levy in 2015, the first one in 24 years, and hoped that it would be enough, but with an enrollment decline, it was not. And we have not been frivolous with our money at all. We've been very good stewards of our money. I would hope that we can pass this levy. I hope there's some school funding changes coming. I know Cupp and Patterson, Senators Cupp and Patterson are looking at changing the funding formula. From what I've seen, if that happens, it will help us, but not a great deal. The first formula that I saw that was out there, we might get an increase of about $140,000. We're going to lose about $240,000 to $250,000 just in kindergarten class versus seniors going out. So we're not keeping up with it. That's where we're at. That's the explanation of where we're at right now. And again, it's just not Newton Falls. There are a lot of school districts that are facing the same things. I've held some community meetings. I've talked to some different organizations just in the last few months. I've had some people say to me, maybe it's time that Newton Falls Schools just folds up and they become a part of other school districts. Why don't we just merge with Lordstown or someone else? Since I've been here, we've had Ledgemont close up north. Newberry is closing. There's a couple other school districts that are in talks with having to perhaps merge with another one. I can tell you this from coming from a small town community. I grew up in Portage County. My children went to Southeast. I went to Waterloo. I spent a lot of my career at Crestwood, so I've been in this area most of my life. In my opinion, schools are the heart of the community. If you don't have the schools, and you don't have the schools and the city government working together, which I think we do a pretty good job working together, and the schools go by the wayside and we become a part of other districts around us, number one, you're going to pay their tax rate, which they're all higher than ours. Number two, you lose your schools, you lose your identity. You're not going to attract young families to want to come here. I don't want to see that happen. Whether or not the 1.75% earned income tax levy is the answer, I don't know. But we're trying to look at a way to think outside of the box with some of the things that we've looked at doing. Couple of the other things we've looked at is, the harvesting of some of the trees to try to put some money into our general fund. Talking to you about bringing some of the city offices and the police down onto our campus. There's not many ways that a school district can raise money. So we've been looking at situations and trying to work with one another to try to help our school keep the doors open, basically. That's what I've been trying to do since I've been here. I'm ready to field any questions you may have, and I appreciate you listening to me.
Are we going to relax council rules so we can ask a question? Could I put a motion to relax council rules?
If you want to,
I'd like to put a motion on the floor that we relax council rules so we can ask a question.
you have to suspend the rules.
Suspend the rules.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Roll, please.
Mr. Alberini? Yes. Mr. Battisti?
Yes.
Mr. Parayak?
Yes.
Mr. Stumpert?
Yes.
Mr. Beer?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes, sir.
what I'd like to ask you tonight is that we talk about the missile defense base and that. How many people did you say were down right now in as far as what the two buildings, because we are discussing tonight on the agenda, maybe a lease on the building. How many are you down in the other two? How many people could you take onto the other two buildings without being crowded?
I would estimate probably a couple hundred, actually, because we're pretty packed at the elementary middle school right now, but we'll probably free up at least one classroom there coming up. And our middle school, our junior high school has got quite a lot of room in it, actually. So I would think that we would have to have 100 to 200 students come into the district before we'd have to panic about that. And a lot of it depends on, how fast that would happen too.
Why would the school board not consider selling us the building?
Why would we not consider
Yes.
selling the building?
Yes, because on a time cycle of 5 to 10 years before the missile defense and all, in the housing situation we have another, why would you not consider selling us the building?
I can't really speak for the school board. I'm not the school board, but we wouldn't want to sell it at this point in hopes that there would be a boom somewhere in the near future where we could one day open it back up. And you get into some logistics there with the law when it comes to selling things like schools and things, which I'm not really that well versed in.
Oh, I understand. Well, that would have to be, that would have to be, the legalities, that would have to be worked out. I understand that, if it could even be done.
Right.
Anything else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Comment, Mr. Chairman, if I could, please. You know, we've had the opportunity in the last couple of years. Where'd you go, Paul? Get back up here.
Sorry. I didn't realize you had a question. I didn't say that.
I'll see you Wednesday anyway, but anyway.
Okay.
We've had the opportunity the last couple of years, myself and the mayor, now Mr. Lynch and so forth, to get to know you personally. And I can say this, you know, with you, it's not about the money or anything like that. It's about you have such a heart and a passion for the children here and for the kids here in Newton Falls. And you don't have to have that. You know, and I know you well enough to know, and I know your pedigree well enough to know that you could take a job somewhere else making 6 figures without all this drama that goes on here. I say that to say this, okay? I'm in total support of investing into the schools, investing into our children. You know, when we moved here 15 years ago, you know, we moved the whole Alberini clan here. Some people liked it and some people didn't like it. But anyway, long story short, we moved everybody here, all of our families. And I'm proud to be a part of the community. And if there's any way, and you know, we're working hard on our side of the fence here. If there's any way, anything or any way we can help you out even more so, I think the council and administration would bend over backwards for you. You know, you're just such a wonderful guy and a leader, and the school is so blessed to have you, and the community is so blessed to have you, so I commend you for being up here. I'm getting emotional, and I shouldn't be getting emotional. Sorry.
I appreciate the kind words, Mr. Alberini, and you've been very supportive of the schools and a backer of us, and I appreciate that. And you know, I've been through a rough year this year. I lost both parents in a 10-month period, and been in the hospital twice. I've had issues with my health most of my life. Mr. Alberini knows this. With me, I put God first, then my family, and then my job, but I've worked 2 jobs for over 40 years. And I would take a bullet for any one of these children. And I care about this community, and I care about these kids. And I've told the Board of Education, I have 4 more years after this year before I can retire. And I will not look for another job. I will stay here until I retire. I gave him my word on that. I plan on seeing this through. I want to see good things happen here. When I leave here, I want us to be flourishing and have a great working relationship. But I appreciate all you've done. My door's always open if anybody wants to come in and speak to me, and I wish all of you the best in the decisions and the things that you have to do on a daily basis, and I appreciate what you do. So thank you.
A motion to reinstate the rules?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll, please.
Mr. Battisti?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Mr. Stumpert?
Yes.
Mr. Beer?
Yes.
Mr. Alberini?
Yes.
Any public comments on tonight's agenda? I'd like to welcome Presley O'Leary. She's a junior at the high school. She's here for her government class. Did you like to say hello? You don't have to, but...
I really don't know what to say.
Hello.
Hey, say hello.
Hello, I'm Presley O'Leary, and I go to TCTC for teaching. And
Presley, you are away from the microphone, so at the
Good.
podium.
Come on up here.
oh my God!
Your words are not being
So we can
caught
hear
by
you.
anyone. There you go.
Thank you.
All right, I'm Presley O'Leary. I go to TCTC for teaching, and I'm just here to listen to you guys and your advice for the town.
Thank you.
Do we need to sign anything before you go tonight?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get that. Under the mayor's report, I attended the Trumbull County EMA meeting, a NOPEC meeting, an AMP meeting, was at the OML Lobby Day in Columbus. We met with a young lady from YSU. She's working on the township's comprehensive plan. We had a chat with her. Great state of the city address there. It was not something I originally wanted to do, but it turned out very good. Tremendous reception for that. A lot of good response to it. A lot of people were kind of amazed to see the mayor of Youngstown sitting there in the front row. It was just kind of neat for people to say, wow. So, Mr. Bariak, do you have a report from the Eastgate annual meeting?
I was not able to attend. I had a doctor's appointment, and I have a doctor's excuse here, which I had to be there at 11:30. I'm sorry I couldn't make it, Mayor, and I will not be able to make tomorrow's either. I have an appointment, so I appreciate you covering for me, sir. If you would be able to do that for me?
I was at the meeting, so. I don't see the written reports to council that we were supposed to have. We passed at the last meeting, so from the reports from last month, do we have the written reports?
One right here that was passed out to everybody.
Okay, anybody else?
I have
Right.
no reports because none of my committees have met.
Okay. All right, Mr. Patisi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last meeting, I made a wrong statement. I did attend the utility appeals board meeting as the alternate I spoke up, but I believe Mr. Alberini is the alternate. I went there with support of Mr. Bariak because he's never been to one of them. I did attend the fish fry at the VFW, and I want to thank Mr. Lynch for some quick action in my ward that we've been working on an issue that should be finished up by tomorrow. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Bariak? Mr. Stempert?
I attended the Newton Falls Joint Fire District meeting. You have in front of you the numbers. This is the final numbers for February. We had total monthly calls of 116. Year-to-date through February, we're always a month behind. We have one meeting a month, so we have it in March. February's numbers are reflected here. But the total year-to-date is 264. The city calls are 158, township are 75, mutual aid 31. And it gives a breakdown as to what they were attached. But that's my complete meeting. I also attended a fish fry. And that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Beer?
Planning and zoning will meet tomorrow night here in council chambers at 6 o'clock. They were meeting at 5:30, but it's 6 o'clock now, so anyone interested, come on out. And I have no other reports because my committees haven't met.
Mr. Alberini?
Mr. Mayor, I've been kind of laying low the last week and a half, as you know, due to some physical issues, but I was fortunate enough to be invited to attend your YSU meeting and Mr. Lynch's meeting with Rachel. We also have a Portage Trumbull County meeting coming up this Wednesday with our group on the MDS. Hoping we have some updated news for the public, and we'll know after that meeting takes place.
Ms. Munson?
Honorable Mayor and members of council, my report to council is the following. I would like to announce to our citizens that the income tax deadline is April the 15th. If you would like to go in person, you do not need to have an appointment, but the Regional Income Tax Agency, known as RITA, is handling our income tax collections this year. You can go to the Youngstown office, which is located at 2761 Salt Springs Road in Youngstown. You can also call them at 866-750-7482. And any citizen wanting a income tax form can come to the Annex Building at any point in time, and we'll be more than happy to answer questions. Also, with my report, just want to let you know this Saturday, we concluded our records retention project. That is done and completed. and financial numbers will be coming in the next council report. And then the last thing I want to report on is the banking proposal. We have done a formalized request for a proposal which is advertised. We'll be seeking sealed bids, and that deadline to be turned in to the finance department will be on April the 15th before 3 o'clock. That concludes my report.
Attorney Fritz.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Ms. Munson.
Okay.
Ms. Munson, I asked for a public records request on economic development. I see that the 2018 contract for Mr. De Cristofaro was paid out.
That's correct.
Okay, and there's also the Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Ellison meeting, which I guess is the lattes and legislation. There was a check there for $2,072.
That's correct.
Okay, so that was a joint venture, I believe, with Mr. Alberini, or was that all taken up by the city?
That was our invoice for that area. That, any detailed questions, I guess,
That
would go
was
to.
the city's portion,
Portion.
Councilman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just one question. But you said you were going out for sealed bids. Are we looking at changing banks or?
We may or may not. And also including in that, we're doing it as a joint project with the municipal court. So the municipal court could be joining the bank that we choose, or they can go completely on their own.
Oh, okay. Now, where are we at it on UAN, the accounting program? And are we online with Ohio checkbook?
Okay. Ohio
I kind of
checkbook,
ask that question every time, but
as I stated previously, multiple meetings before this, the Ohio checkbook project has been done. It's been completed. I think that was done in December or January. It's up and live. You can go to the state treasurer's office website and can see the information. On UAN, it is a very detailed project. As I stated in multiple finance directors' reports, we should have everything up and live hopefully by the end of May. But it depends on the 2018 audit, because it's the very first year that this village will have a comprehensive annual financial report, which is unheard of. We want to be the first in the state to accomplish this. So the audit takes precedent over UAN, but once we get this project done, we're back on UAN. But the goal is to have it done by the end of May.
thank you.
I have a question for Ms. Munson. We chatted previously. How much of it, would you say a labor cost, with you and your team, to put this together for the UAN and the Ohio checkbook? How much, man hours, et cetera, you think you've spent on this project?
On UAN, there was multiple training dates, a lot of phone calls to the state of Ohio. I have not calculated that. But just for the Ohio checkbook, it required a lot of overtime. Ohio checkbook was done by myself, Tamara Smith, Linda Grunder, Pamela Wooford, and Andrea. We calculated a number of hours, so Ohio checkbook cost us, just in labor time, approximately $5,000.
$5,000. So let me ask you an accountant question, because you're an accountant. Is it worth it to do that, to spend the $5,000 to put it up like that?
It's all about the state treasurer's office, about following the rules and regulations, whether a cost-benefit analysis. Everybody has their own opinion on that. I will not state whether it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. There's pros and cons to both sides on that topic.
So it costs roughly $5K to do that then?
Correct, just in our time
I
alone.
understand. Thank you.
Attorney Fritz.
Thank you, Ron. This city council had a special meeting last Friday, which was not televised. The purpose of that meeting was listed as being personnel. It was requested by Mr. Battisti and Mr. Stimpert, and neither of them consulted with me before they requested that special meeting. When we opened that meeting, I was somewhat blindsided because the specific purpose of that meeting, according to Mr. Bariak, was the status of my contract and firing me. The three members, how they were able to communicate without, outside of the open meeting statutes, confusing to me, so there may be some liability to the city, but that aside. The meeting Friday could not proceed because when he said it was just for personnel, it's not specific enough to give the public proper notice. At the end of the meeting, it was adjourned, and Mr. Bariak asked me for the proper language in order to bring my contract before council to have me terminated. I sat here patiently and explained to him. He wrote it down, so I gave the information to him. Since then, as a matter of fact, yesterday, Mr. Bariak, through the city manager, asked for a written opinion from me as to the proper procedure to terminate me as law director. And I will produce a written opinion soon, but it'd be similar to the advice I gave you as we sat here Friday. You should hire an outside lawyer to best address the concerns and ensure that there's a minimal financial and transitional impact upon the city. That's the best way to handle it for the citizens of Newton Falls. I personally cannot objectively provide an opinion on how to terminate me. I don't know your reason, I don't know your purpose, I don't know your motive, I don't know why you requested to fire me. Based upon that, I'm telling you that I'm under contract till October of 2020. There is an early severance provision method up to 9 months of payment if I'm terminated. If I'm terminated, there's some ways I can be terminated and I'm not, the severance disappears. But if you terminate me and pay me the 9 months severance pay, keep in mind, you're gonna have to hire another law director, at least in the interim, or get someone in there. So for 9 months, the city will be paying twice the expense for having a lawyer in here. If the severance provision is not applied, and if I'm terminated for other certain causes, I think I want to advise council the following. To date, I've complied with all requirements of my contract. I've been instrumental in reducing lawsuits in this city. I've been actively involved with all the major projects the last 8 years. I've even found revenue from class action lawsuits that brought tens of thousands of dollars back into the city. If this council wishes to be proper stewards of the city finances, and they want to act in the best interest of the citizens, as you oftentimes repeat to me, you should discuss this matter fully with an outside lawyer before taking any rash action. I repeat, the members of council should do all they can to reduce the financial and transitional impact upon this city, and that can only be done by seeking outside counsel before termination. I'm available for questions, gentlemen.
Yes,
Would you address the chair?
I have a question to Mr. Fritz. Mr. Fritz, do you not have a 30-day notification that to be terminated, has to be given to you?
My contract-
30-day termination in writing in your contract, sir?
Either party may terminate this agreement upon 30 days written notice.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So there's 30 years, you have 30 days. And honoring your contract would be 9 months severance pay.
That's correct.
All right. Now, the reason it was asked after the meeting is that I want something in writing. We were told, first of all, that we didn't do something proper, and I'm not gonna argue that, what was done right, what was done wrong, whether it was put in writing or wasn't. All I wanted to know, if you knew what we did wrong, you should be able to tell us what to do right. In other words, I want it in writing from you so it doesn't flip-flop. I just wanted it in writing. That's all I wanted. I wrote it down, but then I asked again the city manager. I didn't ask you, I went through the proper channel. I would like to have a written opinion. That way I have a paper trail. Is there anything wrong with that? Excuse me, sir, can I ask that question?
What's the question then?
The question, am I doing wrong by asking that?
No.
Thank you.
But I'd like to answer in full, and that is, your original opinion you asked on Saturday was to explain why my opinions on Friday were incorrect, and you wanted verification. I have that opinion done, it'll be dispersed to the council.
I asked for, well, I'm waiting for the other one, and if you don't want to, look,
Mr. Barr, you're talking
I'm
about
not here
two.
to argue with you.
You're not listening. There are two opinions you asked for. One is, was the proper procedure in adjournment and not proceeding? I have that one completed. I will dispense that. It'll be in writing for you. The second opinion you asked for is, how do I fire me? I'm not writing that opinion. Go get a lawyer. I can't be objective. Any opinion, my opinion would be written down saying, don't fire me. So, to answer your question, you're going to get one written opinion that says what happened Friday, and you're not getting a second one.
Okay. All right, well, I kind of figured that would be your answer. Let me ask you another question, since we're on Friday. Why wasn't the meeting adjourned properly?
Excuse me?
Why does the mayor just smack his gavel, say, that's it, meeting over? Was that proper, sir?
He chairs the meeting. I don't see anything irregular with that.
Oh, you don't think anything, okay. All right. Well,
Would you like me to explain it to you?
Huh?
Would you like me to explain it to you?
No, I wanted to ask him. I'm not talking to you, Mayor, excuse me.
I asked you if you want me to explain it to you then.
No,
'Cause
I
I
don't want
can't.
you to explain anything to me. I
Good.
asked the law director.
Well, I'll explain it to the law director, so you'll hear it when
I
I'm done.
asked the law director, sir.
Good, well, I'll explain it too.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Attorney Fritz,
Yes, sir.
who do you file collusion charges with? You or the courts, or the county, or the state?
Pretty broad question.
Yep.
I would probably notify the state, both ethics or the Attorney General's office.
Okay, and who do you, if this action happens, who do you file the temporary or permanent restraining orders with?
Again, it would be both the Ethics Commission in the state of Ohio and the Attorney General would have that capability.
Okay,
If you believe it's a criminal activity, some sort of transfer of money or something like that, it may be clearly Attorney Generals or our local county prosecutors, but they'll probably send it down to the state.
okay, and is it not proper to have the chair terminate a meeting when there is nothing else left on the agenda?
And that's what you do at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Mr. Lynch,
Mr. Fritz, I want,
how many addresses do you want?
excuse me,
No, I just asked.
I
how many you
want,
want.
can I have the floor is this questions for the law director?
Yeah, you're gonna go through the chair to do that.
When will we be able to get the minutes on the meeting?
Why do I?
Has the meeting ever ended? Is your opinion the meeting ended then, sir? Was that your opinion?
Are we talking about Friday's meeting?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it was adjourned.
Mr. Lynch,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot that's happened over the last period of time since this August body convened. And much of it had to do with getting the activity together for the State of the City address. And I just want to make sure everybody understands the purpose of the State of the City address is one that every city should do, that is bring the community together for an opportunity for the city's mayor to address the general issues of the community and to sort of look forward as to what's happening in the future. The president does it, the governor does it. In most of the major communities, the mayor addresses what the issues are. And the meeting that we had last Wednesday was attended by a number of public officials, and it was a chance for positive movement for the city. And as we look forward to more economic development, I want to find more ways for everybody, the mayor and all the members of council, to participate in building this positive image, because the people we're reaching out to bring jobs into the community want to feel like they're landing in a positive environment. They want to see that there's an opportunity to grow. Related to that, I had an opportunity to tour a facility known as Luxair, which, as you know, makes seat cushions. And they are looking for ways to expand. The week before that, I was over at Bar Processing. But the point is, the economy right now is at such a point that business leaders are hungry to find the opportunity to expand. Now, somebody's going to give them that opportunity. It could be a community down the road, it could be a community on the other side of the state. I want that community to be Newton Falls, and I think we can do that. So, we see a lot of positive things happening on the agenda. I just ask all of you to sort of participate in this team effort to make sure that we've got everybody saying Newton Falls wants to be a positive environment. I want all of you to provide the economic opportunities through the programs that we talk about and will be presented to you. Route 5 is virgin territory, just waiting for the seeds to be planted. That's one of the reasons why we went through the process of acquiring Mr. Pasquale's property. And in addition to that, all throughout the community, I can tell there's this tension building of these businesses looking to express the energy of their expansion, and other organizations as well. We can do that, and if you do that, the services that are really the mainstay of what city government is about can be expanded. Councilman Battisti and I probably talk at least once a day about some project going on in his ward where we want to make sure some service is delivered. Councilman Barianic and I are talking about things on a regular basis. Councilman Stimpert, Councilman Beer, all the council people are saying we'd like to have this service. And so we'll find a way to expand services to our citizens, but the key is going to be through economic growth. And what's magnificent about our community is that the key needs that business has for growth are utilities and certain services. And we are the utility provider, not shackled by the barriers that the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio has for generally registered utilities, but operating our own utilities, that's one of the reasons why Venture Plastics made that final decision to cross over the river and be in Newton Falls as a citizen that's going to be producing lots of revenue for our community. In the end, you'll be able to expand your police department, expand other services, more beautification for the parks, more roads being accomplished. I guess I'm asking everybody to sort of feel the momentum and then participate in the momentum as we have the opportunity to do these things. So the state of the city was great, but bigger and better things are coming. That completes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for the city manager? All right, moving on. Mr. Novotny.
Oh, yes. Since the last time I was here, we
Mr. Novotny is the superintendent of the wastewater plant, for those who don't know.
so yeah. Since the last time I was up and spoke in front of council, we've been quite busy. Last couple of weeks we really we're kind of busy. We had to take care of a couple unforeseen projects. One of which we had a line that we had to excavate and actually do some cleaning on it to alleviate some possible flooding issues. Excuse me. Also had Mr. Stempert's ward there. We had a pump station that failed. We have since taken care of that problem and are working on continuing ways to alleviate that from happening anytime in the near future as well. That was due to some equipment failure that has been addressed. We're also starting some of our long-term projects, should be starting fairly quickly, and those pertain to EPA mandates as far as the storm weather issues, the overabundance of water that we see in the system from the storms, things of that sort. So those projects that are getting started right now won't be anything that you typically will see happening. A lot of the stuff that we have to put in place first is new equipment, some telemetry, things at the plant, so that some of my pump stations will be able to actually communicate with each other, and we'll be able to accomplish things at the different pump stations remotely. All of which are the ultimate goal is to take stormwater out of the system and reduce the amount hitting some of the pump stations. So those will be continually moving on. Sometime late summer, you should also see we've got a stormwater project over in the Ridge Road area there, right around the intersection of Broad and Ridge, that'll take some stormwater off. So that's a project that you will actually physically see something happening. Again, they're all tied together and all mandated by the EPA of things that goals that we need to meet. So other than that, that's just life as usual at the castle.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thanks,
I got one question.
Mike. Good.
Now that the weather's broke, I know there's a lot of leaves and stuff and debris that's left on the road that might have, I mean, it may not be your department, but I know you have the vac truck and everything. Are you or another department going around and kind of clearing those debris from the?
Street department takes care of most of the roads and stuff with the street sweeper and their capabilities.
I know it affects you, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, I mean, we see it. As the weather breaks, we will be out doing our routine maintenance in all of our lines. We break it down into certain areas and try to work an entire area, throughout the summer, and then move to another area of town so that we're not just jumping all over the place. Unfortunately, we get calls, or we have an issue somewhere where you may see us somewhere just for a day or an hour or so because we've gotten an issue on a particular line or something like that. So.
Okay.
Mike, if I'm wrong, please feel free to correct me, but last week, I saw you guys down on Water Street is it common to have some of the drains that are really even covered up with some grass or something that you can hardly barely see them? I saw you guys cleaning, is that,
What we were actually doing on Water Street is, the water department had a fire hydrant that was, hit sometime, we don't know when, but it was broken, it was damaged and broken. What we were doing is we were actually using our truck to help them excavate to, get some information they needed to replace it. That's what we were doing over there.
I didn't-
As a matter of fact, we'll be out tomorrow, Water Street there between Main and Olive Street will be closed for a while in the morning because we're going to be working with them to replace that fire hydrant. And that's due to gas lines, the water service lines, everything in that area. It's a lot safer for us to hydro excavate it and clean the hole out than it is to use a backhoe type machine. So that's what we were doing down on Water Street.
I know, but I have seen you fellas doing a lot of drain cleaning with the big machine.
We have been.
And I don't stop and harass you guys because I know one thing, being a business owner myself, when the men are working, never stop them.
Right. So, and as again,
Let 'em work.
As I said, as the weather breaks, you'll see us out more and more through the winter time. It's difficult when there's snow and ice on the roads. The conditions are not ideal, and then it becomes a safety concern to be out on the streets and stuff like that.
You guys have been doing a great job.
Thank you.
Really.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Changes to tonight's agenda. We'd like to add Resolution 19-2019. Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll, please.
Mr. Dvorak?
Yes.
Mr. Stumpert?
Yes.
Mr. Beer?
Yes.
Mr. Alberini? Mr. Battisti?
If possible, I'd like to move the depreciation for the ambulance up, if we could.
Is there somebody here to accept that? I didn't think there was.
No, okay, sorry.
I had asked that earlier to see.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, we need a motion to approve the minutes from the March 18th, 2019 regular meeting.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll, please.
Mr. Stumpert?
No.
Mr. Beer?
Yes.
Mr. Alberini?
Yes.
Mr. Battisti?
No.
Mr. Dvorak?
No.
Gentlemen, the minutes from the March 18th meeting now stand approved as read as submitted to you, and that also goes for the minutes from the March 4th, 2019 minutes that were submitted to council. Those now stand approved as submitted. Yes, if there are no objections to the minutes, they stand approved as submitted. In our body, you get the minutes prior to the meeting, you have a chance to go over and read them. If there are no objections to the minutes, then they stand approved as read.
Did I get the approved minutes?
You got minutes to look at, and you were served with minutes to look at, a draft, and you have no objections to the draft, therefore they stand approved as submitted. You got it in your email with the rest of the council information. Okay, we have no public hearings. Under new business, would the clerk please read ordinance 2019-2010?
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with the Newton Falls Board of Education.
Is there a motion to accept ordinance 2019-2010?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move, I don't know if this is proper, but I'd like to move to table this if we could, because I think there needs to be a little bit more discussion, maybe a work session where we can answer questions about some of the things like, I don't know, I mean, I haven't received anything that says what the cost of maintenance will be, and, you know, I think there's a lot of questions as to regards to the children being in there and the daycare center and so on. I'm not against the school building. I like the room and everything, but I just would like to have a little bit more deeper look at this.
Well, you can ask all those questions under the information part once it goes to the floor. But I will tell you, if it's tabled, then the legislation that was passed by this school will be void, and we won't be able to comply with the, what they passed, so this will go by the wayside.
Okay.
So you
Well,
can,
then I'll withdraw
you
my,
can discuss this.
Without tabling, you could discuss and pass this, but it's not passed yet, it's not an emergency, so we'd be back here within 14 days. You have time between now and then to schedule a special meeting if that's what you need, or give specific questions to the city manager to get for your benefit, and then the next time, meeting from now, you might have that information.
would really like to see a work session sometime between now and then.
Be happy to do it.
Will the clerk please read ordinance 2019-10? Oh, I did? Okay. So motion to accept ordinance 2019-10.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion on the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I'm glad Mr. Woodard came tonight. I think it's important that we establish a strong relationship with the school in support of them. I know there's some vacant buildings over there, and I appreciate the opportunity for us to further cement that relationship. Mr. Lynch, I appreciate you going over there, and you know, this building's old here. It's seen better days, and I think I think our folks here are due some more room to work out of, a more professional. Not that it's not a professional environment, but I told Lyle, the mayor, the other day, I said, boy, it sure would be nice because all the entertaining of dignitaries that are coming into town to have a nice conference room and a nice area to treat Paul to lunch and things like that. And but I'm in full support of this.
Mr. Battisti?
I would have to agree with Mr. Beer. I'd like to know more about, there's a paragraph in here about a building, there's no building cost, there's moving costs from this building to that building, there's moving cost of the landlord's property to a somewhat location. There's too many variables in there.
This is my first address.
So far,
I'd like to ask, can I put a motion on the floor to table it? Am I allowed to do that now? I want to put a motion, I heard Mr. Beer withdraw his, but I want to put a motion on the floor to table it. I don't know enough about it. There's no hurry. If the school board wants to make a deal, I'm sure that they'll make a deal. I don't see why we can't get a deal struck. But I want to know what the cost is. I'm dealing with taxpayers' dollars here. I don't know what the taxpayer's getting into. There's a lot of security systems, there's moving, there's everything. The building hasn't even been, there's just too many variables that, video systems. I want to put a motion on am I allowed to put a motion on the floor, Mr.
no,
Fritz?
you look at me and ask me that question, okay? I'm running the show.
Oh.
You ask me if I can do that.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you can.
I would like to put a motion on to table it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Well, when I said that, I had no idea that it would completely kill it. I don't think we want to kill the issue. I would just like to have a meeting where we can sit down and hash this out, answer questions, find out maybe the cost of some things like maintenance and heating and so on like that. If we pass this table, we're going to kill it completely. You could always vote against it in the final reading. I think we need to just wait and have a meeting, a work session between now and then if you don't want it, vote against it. But I just want some questions answered. I'm not against it. I think it's a beautiful building, but I just want to know some answers to things.
Second address, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we're on the discussion of the motion to table. All right. Mr. Stimpert?
I'm not sure who to ask, either.
Ask the question to me and we'll refer this, whatever you gotta do.
The question I have is I kind of agree with his first motion that he withdrew and John's, but could you explain, so this will kill the deal, we will have to go, how does that affect the killing of the deal, and where would we go from here if we wanted to do it in the future?
Would you like to explain that for us?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, Councilman Stimpert in particular. Well, there are a couple of things to say that would address the question that you've asked. The school board approved the contract that's attached here. It was approved, I think the vote was 3-1 in favor, and it was passed, I believe, in the meeting that was about 2 weeks ago over at the chambers of the Board of Education. That contract which is attached has a beginning date of May 1, so that's what they've passed. The law director has instructed me that we should not try to pass this tonight because it should go with 2 readings. Therefore, if you table this motion today, the first reading would be on April 15th. We could have the work session that Councilman Beers talked about, and answer some of the questions Councilman Battisti has talked about, and that's appropriate, and I'm happy to comply with that. But that means your first reading then will be on April 15th. That also means, because we have to have 2 readings, your second reading will be on May 6th. And May 6th, the matter will become moot, because the Board of Education has passed a May 1 contract. And that's the reason why, as Councilman Beers indicated, you're effectively killing it. Now, I guess what I'm trying to get at, to the extent there's some reservations, the purpose of having 2 readings is to make sure that your process is a deliberative one, in which you have all the answers before you ask to pass and make a final vote on this measure. Therefore, I have no problem complying with any of the informational requirements that you have. If you do want to kill it, don't kill it in its infancy. Kill it when it's a teenager at the second reading, and at least keep it vibrant and alive for the purposes of our discussion. Some of the answers to your questions you're going to see are so attractive to us that I think you'll regret the idea that you didn't take advantage of the opportunity. And all those questions, by the way, are quite relevant. You can see from the list in the city manager's report, I've been meeting with different experts about the nature of that building, and I can address some of those issues. And I wouldn't expect you to come here on April 1 and say, yes, let's pass it. But I would like you, don't table it, vote in favor of it tonight. That doesn't mean you've passed it. It means you've said, let's go to a different meeting, that is the meeting of April 15th, and use the interim time to get the information. And then on the 15th, you conclude it's not appropriate because the information you've received from me in between is not satisfactory. Do whatever your legislative duty is, what's in your heart as it relates to this. But I'm urging you not to necessarily have the death knell rung as it relates to this. And I think there'll be an opportunity for some good things to happen with the schools in the final analysis. It's your decision, but in the interest of getting information, you don't want to inadvertently kill the patient, and I think that's what might happen tonight.
Anything else?
Can I get a second address? First of all, I don't want anyone to feel that I'm against the school or the children. But there's a lot of people out there right now that are asking, why are we paying for something twice? Some people are saying, we're paying $4,some hundred a month to take care of what's theirs.
We'll save that. We're on the motion to, actually, it's a motion to postpone, and it's not to table.
Well, I'm
So-
giving my reasons why to table it.
Okay,
Is that all right, Mayor?
well, then, why are we gonna table it then?
All right.
Or
I haven't
postpone,
been,
I'm sorry.
I haven't been involved. I don't feel that if it does go back to the board, that the board will squelch it. The board wants to make a deal. They'd like to have, someone help them out with the money. And maybe, I'm not asking to pull teeth or anything, but I'd like to know what we're getting into on our side. And once we establish that, maybe we might have to go back to them and ask them for a better deal. Because when we know that we might be getting into a lot more than what we thought, we might not want to offer what we offered. So you can do what you want.
Any other
I can't
discussion?
support
Mr. Beer? Mr. Beer?
Like I said earlier, and I would ask all the council members not to table this, not to kill this, but you could do that in the next meeting, next regular meeting, if you don't decide you don't want this. But let's get together and have a work session. I want everybody to bring what your concerns are, just like Mr. Bariak just mentioned. I want them to be part of that meeting, and let's get it all out on the floor in a work session. And then, if you don't want it, you can kill it in the following meeting. But please, I brought this up because I have concerns, okay? I'm not 100% sold on it. I like the building. I'd like to help the school system, but we need to have an informational work session. And I would ask that council would pass this tonight and give Mr. Lynch and everybody a chance to present this in the right manner, and then we can make our final decision. Thank you.
Mr. Alberini?
Mr. Lynch, you've negotiated the best possible deal that you can negotiate. I'm trusting you on that. Mr. Woodard's here tonight. He has negotiated the best possible deal, him and the school board, with the city. So I have to tell you that I have the utmost confidence in the both of you that the package that you're presenting is the best package, not just for Newton Falls, but also for the school. I do like the idea of us having a presence over there on the campus in support of the schools, especially the way things are going in our nation right now. And I do like the idea of, I'm a firm believer, as I told Paul privately and publicly, that we need to do our part to help the school system. And if this is the way we can do that and also solve a problem for us as far as room and expansion goes, I think it's a win-win situation. I have no issue with it whatsoever. I think council needs to get into the year 2019 and 2020 and start progressing instead of thinking backwards like we have been doing. So that's my opinion.
Any other discussion on the motion to postpone? Roll on the motion to postpone?
Mr. Beer?
Motion to table.
Motion.
Is this the motion?
This is the motion to, there is no table, it's to postpone.
Oh.
That's the terminology, that there is no table, you need to postpone it.
Will that kill the deal, or?
Same as a motion to table.
It's the same as the motion to table, it's
Okay.
gonna do the same thing that
Okay.
the motion to table did.
I vote no.
Mr. Alberini?
No.
Mr. Battisti?
No.
Mr. Bariak?
No,
Mr. Stimpert?
No.
Okay, the motion to postpone fails. We're back to the ordinance of 2019-10 for discussion.
Is it back on the floor?
We're back on the floor.
Make a motion.
No, we're back on the floor for discussion. Mr. Malberini, Mr. Variak, Mr. Battisti have had one address.
Could we get Mr. Lynch, I know he's kind of verbally said this, but could we get him to commit to, at some time before now on April 15th, to have a work session amongst all of us and get us, and maybe we can bring all the questions to the table?
I think that's a good idea, honestly. I mean, it's like, there are a lot of questions. I have questions. I mean, we've talked about, I have questions that I think can be answered, but I think you're right. There's some things, and whether you want to discuss it in the body of this tonight, bring your questions up now. At least maybe you can get, bring your questions up, and we can write them down and have answers. But I have no problem with the work session. I think it'd be a good idea, because there's a number of questions that, even when you go over and you go through with the people went through this past week, or, last week, there's still some questions. And, you talked about moving expenses, and I believe that the school may not have to move any of their stuff. So that's there's just some things that we've talked about that, with some people. And I think it's a good question. I really is. If you want to ask questions tonight of the city manager, things that are on your mind, put it out. We have discussion, throw them out there, and then we can have a meeting and have open discussion on the meeting. That's fine.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The answer is yes. I commit myself to participating in a work session because of these surrounding issues. And remember, I started circulating a potential agreement in terms of while I was negotiating this with all the members of council. I think I've been doing it for about 8 or 9 weeks now. So all of you have seen different versions of this. Councilman Bariak must call me 3 times a day with a question about the thing with the schools. And the reason he does that is because obviously of his concern for all these different elements we've been discussing, moving costs, what's going on with the annex, and these interrelated, many moving parts. So a firm commitment, and I think it'd be great to shed more light on some of these other questions. So if you'd be kind enough to vote yes on this first reading, I'll commit to that work session.
May I address Mr. Lynch on this matter?
Yes, please.
I have a lot of questions, I mean, as we all do.
Sure.
May I just email you my questions? Is that legal, Mr. Fritz? Okay, I'd like to just do that,
Sure.
because there are so many unknowns, and you may get duplicates, like Mr. Beer may send some, or may ask some.
If I could
but-
ask everybody to do that, it would make my presentation have a little bit more flow to it so that we don't jump back and forth. So if I ask everybody to use your email system to get the questions to me, I can make a smooth presentation.
Mr. Batiste?
When do you want those by?
Like, well,
The end of this week or something?
I would say by the end of this week, April 15th will be here before you know it. All the accountants in the room will agree with that. So, yeah, I would say, yeah, by the end of this week, that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Mr. Beer?
Well, I'd just like to say, I think it's a great idea, we should all submit emails. I would like to see your emails. I want to see why you guys want it or don't want it. I mean, please don't think that that's negative. I mean, you can see mine too, but I'd just like to see, you know, what everybody's thinking here. And, you know, one of my main concerns is if they have a daycare center in there and we have the police department in there and we have felons coming in and so on, you know, I mean, you know, I know may sound ridiculous, but you know, in this day and age, you don't know, you might be dealing with terrorists. Do you want them in a school building with young preschool children? You know, so I need some assurances. If that's going to be the case, how are we going to make sure that they are secure? And, you know, I mean, that's one question. And there's a lot of other questions like the money and the, you know, maintenance and so on. But I will submit to you my concerns.
Maybe what we could do, just a suggestion, is you ask to have that by the 15th. Today's the 1st. Maybe you got a week, maybe by next Monday, the 8th, submit all your questions to the city manager. He can catalog those questions and then send them back out to everybody in an email. And it is a good idea to look at, because sometimes other questions spur other questions. So maybe he could send those back out and all the questions that were asked, and still give you a couple more days to say, oh, I didn't think about that. Maybe I have another question before we do that. Maybe that would be a good idea.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure we can get the work session in between, though. That's why I was asking, if you get them by the end of this week.
Okay.
And then maybe we can consider the idea of a work session, since the 8th is a non-council Monday. Maybe we can have the work session on, and I'll send out notices, but if I'm not seeing any objections, I could send out a notice for a work session, which I don't think I need a councilmanic motion for, Mr. Chairman.
To have a council work session? We should schedule that, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, on the 8th.
On the 8th?
You're scheduling a work session now besides the emails, is that what you just said?
Yes.
Emails are due Friday.
He wants the
right?
emails done by Friday, and maybe he can be able to compile those if you get them in early enough and send them back out, and then have a work session on Monday, the 8th at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, and that'll also allow the police department to be a little bit more represented. As you know, Chief Fixler is dealing with some other issues right now, and my suspicion is that he'll be available by that time.
Mr. Lynch, Mayor, am I allowed to have another, am I on my second?
You have one more, you have a second. Anybody else? We all have first. You have a second, yes.
Has anybody not had their first?
No.
Mr. Lynch, it all sounds hunky-dory and, hey, let's all wave the flag. I want transparency for all the people in Newton Falls to know where every dime is gonna, and I want a list, this is gonna go, that's gonna go. I don't want no guesstimation. We got a building gonna be built over there. 20, 30,000, 50,000. We may be sinking a lot of money over there, and we don't even own it. And I know one part of the contract tonight says As soon as we sign this contract, we forgive them $77,000 worth of electric. How come if they throw us out, we don't have them buy the building back off of us? Why didn't we negotiate something like that in there? Where there were, why are we, what seems like there's a lot, and then when they first negotiated the contract, just a gymnasium, now we're giving them 3 rooms. That's, where do we stop giving? Huh, Mr. Lynch, where do we stop giving? You were gonna play hardball with them.
Go ahead.
Excellent questions for addressing at the work session, Councilman. I'll be delighted to do so at that time.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think, I make a suggestion that we have a motion for work session, and that you get a roll vote on it.
Well, we're gonna vote on this, and then we'll put the work session later on the agenda, have it on.
And if, you're
Yeah, because we're about to do.
not gonna do the subsidiary, okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions on ordinance 2019-10? Roll, please.
Mr. Alberini?
Yes.
Mr. Battisti?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
No,
Mr. Stumpert?
I'm sorry.
We're
This,
voting on the,
I want
the
to,
actual.
First reading,
First
is
reading.
this on the first reading?
This is on a first reading?
just first reading.
Yes.
Mr. Stimpy.
Mr. Beer?
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. Would clerk please read ordinance 2019-11?
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a pole attachment agreement.
Is there a motion to accept ordinance 2019-11? Second?
Second.
Discussion? Do you want to kind of explain that a little bit?
Finance Director would be the one.
All right, Honorable Mayor and members of council, this is an agreement that our electric department is recommending. This is for a company to place aerial cables on our certain poles. This is a contract like we already have in place for 2 other vendors, and we would be billing this per the contract. So we already have this in place with 2 other vendors, and this is just following suit. So they want to allow to place their aerial cables on our poles, and so we basically created a contract similar to the other 2 vendors that are currently allowed to do this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to let you know, this, he's in the audience, but this has received the Bill George stamp of approval.
Well,
And that should end all discussion, I would
that should
think.
be it.
Good enough for me.
I just have one question. Is this an income base? I went through it and looked at the contract. Are we receiving income, and what type of lines are they placing? Or, I mean, I don't know who this company.
We would send a bill annually. This is a contract, we would receive revenue, it would be going to the electric fund. And this is basically very similar to the 2 contracts the city already has in place to allow vendors to put items on our poles.
But you don't know what those items are?
Well, it depends on how many they put on the poles, so that it depends on how many attachments they do. So I don't have, well, once they get it completed, there would be an audit and we would bill them, like we do with our current vendors.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Stewart, my understanding is there's a business in town that wants to upgrade their cable services for purposes of the internet. The State Public Utility Commission has some restrictions on what we can charge, how we can charge. Mr. George presented the information to me from the previous contract, I reviewed, make sure it's still current. They also supplied to us the list of every telephone pole and where they're putting it. It's probably not gonna be, they probably tell you more than what they're gonna use, but then afterwards, it gets done, there's an audit done. They have to notify the electric department for each and every pole they work on. The rest of that is just most of making sure everyone knows what the liabilities and responsibilities are after the fact. And there's really no way to stop it. If we don't sign a contract, they go to the state and the state makes us do it.
Well, there is really no way to stop it, but there is a way to make it a little harder on them to do certain things and require them to possibly move certain poles or wherever our attachments are going to be, to create certain heights, set new poles if they can't get the heights within our boundaries or our clearances that we need. This is something that the Ohio Municipal League has been arguing about and talking about for a very long time, as it affects all the communities in the state of Ohio. And it's a little in-depth and a little complicated. I'm glad that Mr. George is on top of that. It takes somebody with a little bit of understanding of what's really happening with this, to understand what we're doing and get what we're giving permission to. But it can get a little complicated, as it has with a couple of communities, when it comes to moving, attaching to a pole and moving it later. Who's going to pay the expenses of that? Because some of them could get pretty expensive depending on what's on the pole. So I'm glad you've looked at this and are up on it, because we've had a lot of discussion, at our meetings about what's in these things, and it's just not as clear and simple as somebody attaching to the pole. It's just not that simple. But any other discussion? Roll, please.
Mr. Battisti?
Yes.
Mr. Boriak?
Yes.
Mr. Stumpert?
Yes.
Mr. Beer?
Yes.
Mr. Alberti?
Yes.
The clerk, please read Resolution 17-2019.
Resolution authorizing donations to veterans organizations.
Is there a motion to accept 17-2019?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Somebody want to?
Mr. Chairman, this idea of what to do with the excess funds from the military banners was presented to me by the city clerk, Kathy King. And it's a little bit unusual to ask the clerk to describe it, but since it was your idea, Kathy, and a good one, if you could mention to the members of the body what your idea was about.
We have a little bit of excess funds from the military banners that we sell on an annual basis. And the reason we have a little bit is because we want to make sure that each year, if we have to replace the posts or something to do with hanging the banners, that money's there. So when we started this program, we made the verbal commitment that any excess funds would be sent to a veterans organization. This is just putting it in writing and making sure we do that.
Great idea, Kathy, great idea.
Any other comments or questions? Roll, please.
Mr. Boriak? Mr. Stumpert?
Yes.
Mr. Beer?
Yes.
Mr. Alberti?
Yes.
Mr. Battisti?
Yes.
Clerk, please read Resolution 18-2019. It's the medical certification policy for the,
There it is. A resolution adopting a medical certification policy to assist utility customers.
is there a motion to accept Resolution 18-2019?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Explanation?
All right, dear Mayor and honorable members of council, this resolution has come from the Finance Department staff. We have researched this thoroughly, contacted other cities and find out what their policies were in place. We also contacted the Public Utilities Commission to find out if we can do this policy. So we researched this. So what this is a medical certification policy to help our community, our residents, for medical conditions that we would define as detriment for health, such as those members that rely on life support services, such as respirators, ventilators, or other medical equipment. So what would happen is a resident would have to go to a doctor and get it certified. There would be a form that would get through the utility office, and they would need to take this to their doctor, and it's for 30 days. And so what we would do is to prevent a utility disconnection, and this form can only be used for 3 times in a 12-month period. So again, this is to help our community members that are in those medical situations. So this is to provide better customer services to our residents for this.
Any questions?
Anna, what does that mean? Again, we'll do much for them?
What it means is, though, if somebody is really behind on their medical bills and we're ready to shut them off, let's say for non-payment, what they would need to do is, if they qualify within the definition of being with medical services, such as on life support or on a ventilator,
Yeah.
or with medical equipment, they would need to get certified. It has to be certified by an actual medical professional on this, and then we would review it, their application, and it would prevent them from getting their utilities shut off. But again, there's rules and regulations. We would only allow this for 3 times in a 12-month period. And the certification is only valid for 30 days. It's to help our citizens in these types of situations to get their utilities paid up so we don't disconnect.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask?
Yes.
So, Ms. Hannah, it's almost like an FMLA policy for those people who are in dire straits then. for the.
Yeah, you can analyze
Yeah,
that, yes.
Gotcha. I love this idea. I love it.
Any other questions? Ms. Munson, with this, and even to, Mr. George, this is a policy that you've set up to prevent people from being shut off. But in some utilities, they have a system set up where if you're on life support or an iron lung or those kind of things, that we have that information here. And when you have a process of restoration of utilities during a large outage or a storm, that, we know that police, fire, schools, those things are first. But would this be on a record somewhere that if we knew we had somebody in the community, that we might be able to check with them and provide them with, generation, temporary generation? Or does that, help us restore them any quicker if they're on that dire life support? But can we use it for that purpose also?
Absolutely, and I just want to make this announcement too. Obviously, with people in these circumstances, we want to take the extra step to help them. But we know that there's no guarantee when there is no power. But our electric department will work very diligently to fix that. But also, these individuals should always have a backup plan just in case of those types of emergencies. And I do need to give credit where credit is due for this policy. Most of this hard work came from Pamela Wolford, our new utility administrator, and as well as Andrea Perkovich. Those two young ladies in my office worked hard on this policy, and I thank them for their work.
Anything else? Roll, please.
Mr. Stumpert?
Yes.
Mr. Bear?
Yes.
Mr. Alberini?
Yes.
Mr. Battisti?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
Could you please read the appreciation of the AMVETS?
A certificate of appreciation to AMVETS Post 112. The Newton Falls City Council acknowledges and thanks the Newton Falls AMVETS Post 112 for use of their facilities during a plumbing crisis in the administration building on Thursday, March 21st, 2019. Newton Falls City Council employees wish to express their sincere appreciation to AMVETS Post 112 for their service to the community.
Is there a motion to accept this appreciation? Second?
Second.
There's a lot of things you could say about this, but we won't. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Roll, please.
Mr. Beer?
Yes.
Mr. Alberini?
Yes.
Mr. Battisti?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Mr. Stumpert?
Yes.
All right, this next one is the review and the bring in compliance all the standing committees. Back on January 7th, council passed the following committees: Planning, Zoning, Civil Service, Park and Recreation, Finance, Administration, Audit, Policy, or Utilities, Public Works, Public Safety, Eastgate Regional Council of Governments, Tax Review Board and Enterprise Zone, Fire Board, Utility Appeals Board, Local Board of Review, Tax Review, appointments to the Civil Service Commission from Ms. Braemeier and Mr. McCoy. In doing some research to respond to what I believe is a legal and unauthorized investigation into the office of the mayor, I found that there was a little bit of an issue there. So the vote on that day for those committees is invalid, and at this time, I have to rule those votes were null and void, and those committees no longer exist. So tonight, you now have to reestablish those committees, and it requires 4 votes to establish those committees. I looked.
Mayor, what is your reasoning?
Council rules and procedures, section 6.
Hold on, please.
I believe that
Council
the law
rules.
director ruled that to be 3 votes.
It's wrong, and I'm not sure at that time how it went, but I do know that it's wrong. If you listen, I'll explain it. It says the motion by a regular or special meeting may establish standing committees and by affirmative vote of the majority of council's total membership. I am considered a part of the.
Point of order.
What is your point of order?
Point of order, I want to use
Article 14.
Article 14 of council rules to
I'll second it.
overrule.
I'll second that. Article 14 under council rules.
Article 14.
Procedure.
Article 14. Well, we'll look at that and see what you got there. Do you know what it is?
Yes.
What is it?
It's, there's a paragraph in there to,
Here, let me read it to you, Mayor.
I don't have
Sure.
it in front
I'm
of
looking
me,
at
I
Article
apologize.
14. Go ahead.
Amendments, modifications, suspension. The decision of the chair may be overturned by a majority vote of council. Amended 5/8/2009. majority vote.
Well, first of all, that is that rule is invalid at this time.
No, it's not.
Because it is too, because the initial vote was wrong, and the chair has the right to rule a proper vote null and void. Null and void. The rule, those votes are null and void, and we will establish new committees tonight.
Mr.
The
Mayor,
law
I have a
director-
question.
Ask the law director.
You can ask me.
I have a question.
Yes,
It does say you are a member of council, but
That's
you are a
correct.
non-voting member of council.
that's correct.
Okay, so how could a non-voting member of council count in the votes?
You should ask the guy that put it in there. This charter was made in 1966, and since 1966, there have been 58 amendments to the charter, 48 of them under 2 mayors. 48 changes have been made to this charter by 2 different mayors. And when you start changing things, it has implications on the rest of it. It says total membership. It's the only place in here that says total membership. And if you go back to 1992, all of the committees were passed by at least 4 votes. And so those have been ruled invalid, and the votes are no longer any good. The committees don't exist.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Let's put them back together.
Excuse me, Mayor. You're trying to say,
No, I did say.
all right, then what we've done for the past 10, 20, and 30 years is going to be ruled invalid.
No,
We
they're not.
may-
No.
Oh.
No, those have all been done correctly. This year, when you guys shoved it down council's throat, was the only time that it's been done wrong. So,
Opinion of the law director.
Mr. Batiste, or Mr. Bariak? This is the same question we've had, and Ms. Sopkovich and I are both going to issue our opinion. My oral opinion was that it says in that section, total membership of council. And if you look
Doesn't
under,
say total voting membership.
it does not say voting, it says total membership of council. If you go to the section that describes what the mayor's duties are, he is considered a member of council, can bring forth legislation to do things. So I don't know how to avoid saying the total membership of council is not 6 people. But again, you're asked for a second opinion from Ms. Sopkovich, where her and I are in the process of putting that all together to submit to the council.
I make a motion then that we table this until we get a second legal opinion on it, sir.
those have certainly been ruled out of order, and you have no committees at this time.
Well, the committees can stand.
The
until we
committees
get our
do not
second
stand.
opinion.
The committees have been ruled out of order, and they're out of order. And they're null and void. I have that right to rule, when there's an improper vote, to rule them null and void, and I've done that. So, you can table it, but you have no committees. I mean, you can postpone it, but you have no committees.
I want to, I'd like to
I have a
postpone.
question for the law director. If we postpone this or table it, does that put us in violation of the charter?
Some of the committees would be in violation of the charter, not all. Things like the civil services on there, sir?
Planning and zoning.
Planning and zoning,
Park and Rec.
those are required, so we would be technically in violation of charter for a period of time.
Well, I have no information on these committees or who wants to be on them.
I have all that for you.
Well,
I'll be happy to pass it out to you.
well, now, wait a minute, now, we didn't get any kind of draft, just like we did, like, there was a question tonight about a draft in our thing, and you're gonna give it to me now, and you expect me to vote on it? Absolutely.
You voted on it the night it was
Can
done like
we-
that, without any
All
arguments.
right, excuse me,
It was,
Mr.
it was
Can I have
presented
it addressed,
to the
Mr. Mayor?
clerk. It was presented to the clerk.
Can we go to the prosecutor, the attorney? I'd like to make a
Excuse me,
motion that we
I
go
You're out of
to,
order,
excuse
Mr.
me,
Bariak.
I haven't addressed, let me ask this question, okay? Now, to Mr. Batista's question, to where all of a sudden you say you were notified, all right? Let me ask you this, Mr. Mayor, in your research, out of respect for the members of council who weren't asked to be appointed on certain committees, was that lawful?
No, when you have committees where you do not require mandatory participation in the committees, you have the right to refuse the appointment to that committee.
So let's say this, let me ask you a question then. So if I have a potential council person who's not gonna be in the area, vote me on a committee that he's not gonna be around, does he have that right to do that?
He doesn't have the rights to force you to be on it, no.
Gotcha, thank you.
that's your opinion.
It certainly is,
That's
and I've
your
got,
opinion,
and I've got
man.
things to back
Can we
up.
go to the attorney?
You're out of order, Mr. Bariak. Mr. Batiste, you're all out of order over there?
Mr. Mayor,
Sir,
I'd just like to say that, I was told that I didn't have the right to say no to a committee, but now I understand.
Ditto.
I have that.
And you do have the right.
And it's like that night, if you remember, I said that I couldn't attend some of those meetings because of the way I work. And Mr. Stemper told me that I could take vacation days for it. I think it was rammed down our throat, and I want to see the whole thing redone.
Okay, so the committees are on the floor to be
I
reestablished.
make a motion that we take this for detrimental judgment
Attorney General.
to the Attorney General or the prosecutor to give us a decision on this, because this is not proper procedure. Do I have a second?
No, you don't, that's an out of order motion. There's no motion to postpone.
adjourn then.
Ooh, you want to do that? Go ahead. Is there a motion to adjourn? You want a motion to adjourn? You've already made that motion. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion, we adjourn. And that'll be the next meeting, we'll start right where we left off today.
Tomorrow, that's where I'm going.
Have a good time.
Have a good time.